Welcome back. Now, as earlier indicated, tonight we are discussing the April inflation rate with the Namibia Statistics Agency, where we examine the performance of the monthly inflation rate in Namibia as measured by the Namibia Consumer Price Index, the NCPI. The inflation rate measures the change in the Consumer Price Index, the CPI, for the month under review compared to the previous month. Now, month-on-month changes as well as the corresponding month in the previous year, as well as also year-on-year changes. Now, to discuss this business today's Erica NAWINDA spoke to Elijah SAUSHINI. He is the Price Statistics Manager at the Namibia Statistics Agency. Here is that discussion.
Let's get into the first question. What is the significance of inflation data that is released by NSA in terms of policy formulation and that is for the performance of this country's economy?
Yeah, thank you very much for that question. But maybe before I zoom into the question, maybe I would like just to a short presentation of what the inflation is, because we have new viewers that will be wondering what we are talking about.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so when you are looking at inflation, inflation is basically the average change in prices that consumers pay for a basket of goods. Now, you notice in the definition that we have different components, and that is being the basket that is paid for, the change, and the overtime. So over time, it refers to month or year to year. Then the change, of course, we are looking at the average change in the prices of products. And these products are now what are grouped together to form a basket. This basket has so many goods, and in terms of aggregation, they are aggregated to 12 major groups, but this can go on to subgroups, individual items, and at the very last level. So, yeah, coming to your question now, it is very significant to have this compilation, because it's a statistics, it's an economic indicator, and it's used for a variety of reasons. And one of the reasons that we are looking for is to inform policy formulation. Of course, the government has two major policies that they always advance in order to fine-tune the economy. And one of them is monetary policy that is conducted by the Bank of Namibia, and they depend on inflation, whether to rise or to decrease that. Another important policy is the fiscal policy that is run by the government. They can increase taxes, they can reduce the taxes, and then they can push the money in the economy through that way. And that is how inflation is also used. And also it provides, you know, the facts for decision making. We know that statistics are facts. Without facts, you cannot make those proper decisions. And another one is also to monitor and to evaluate different policies as well as programs. You might be aware that the government is running so many programs, and those programs, they rely heavily on data in order to evaluate whether there is, you know, a change into the direction where the government wants to go or otherwise not. And if it's otherwise not, then we'll be able to fine-tune depending on the outcome. And then finally, now to look at the significance of that in terms of economic growth. I mentioned earlier that inflation is an economic indicator, and it provides, you know, the status of how healthy an economy is. If you have inflation that is into, for example, double digits, then you must already know that the health status of the economy is not what we are, you know, looking forward to. It tells a lot of negative things about the economy. But when you have inflation rates that are kept at low level, then at least also you are alerted that, yeah, the economy is moving in the correct direction.
All right. Now let's touch on the factors that actually inform the change in the monthly consumer price index. Just perhaps talk to us about those factors and just give us typical examples.
Yeah, thank you. I think there are two factors, rather two major factors. One is the general factor, and then the other one is the specific factors, now looking at what transpired in the month of April. So one of the general factor is the seasonal adjustments. So seasonal adjustment, it's something that happens seasonally. I'll give an example of holiday season. You'll find that in holiday seasons, spending patterns change. When you look at Christmas, you find that around the Christmas Eve and so on, people will be having a lot of parties. They buy a lot of foods and stuff, yes. So that may result in a temporary increase of prices, and which leads to that inflation that will be observed at that particular time. So that's one general one. And another one, we're also looking at the exchange rate. The exchange rate is that rate that you exchange your currency with another currency. And we know that we are buying most of our products from outside Namibia, and for us to do that, we need to exchange our currency with the currency of the country where we are importing the goods from. And having said that, we know that when we have a depreciation of the currency, it means that we now need to exchange more of our dollars to get one unit of the foreign currency. That will enable us to buy in the other country. So if we have our low currency, then it means we need more of our Namibian dollar to buy from outside. And that can also cause inflation. Then we also look at government policies. I already spoke of the fiscal and monetary policy. So those are also general, factors that can lead to inflation either going up or going down. But now when we look at the specific factors now as to what transpired in the month of April, I think we have a couple of products that are responsible for the slowdown in inflation. One of them is the subcategory of clothing and footwear. Then we have hotels, we have transport, we have the category of alcoholic beverages. We also have, the health sector. Maybe in my introduction, I missed out to say this inflation is computed from two sides. It's the physical goods that we see, that we buy, and also the services. Hence, transport also forms part of that.
All right. Now, staying with the month of March, let's perhaps talk about the inflation that stood at 3.6%, speaking under correction, that is compared to now the 4.8% that was registered in last year, April, which is 2024. Talk to us about what some factors are that actually led to this decrease, seeing that it's coming from 3.6 to 4.8.
Okay. Yeah, basically.
Or rather from 4.8 to 3.6%.
Yeah. Basically what happens is this is an annual inflation rate. So we are comparing the month of April last year to the month of April this year.
Yes.
So if you compare that, you will notice that last year the inflation rate was 4.8% and it actually declined to 3.6%. So there were major contributors. One of the major contributor is the category of food and alcoholic beverages. Then we have another one, which is housing, electricity, gas, and other fuels. And then you have alcoholic beverages. And these are major categories in the basket of computing the CPI. So the reason why these have experienced the decline, it's because of a lot of external factors. And when you look at these categories, you'll find that they actually have one of the biggest weights in the food basket that we use to compile the CPI. So when they decline, so they have a much bigger impact to the overall basket of the CPI.
All right. Now let's talk about the three zones. In the report of the NSA, it also included that zonal inflation is one of the important topics rather there. So let's break down these three zones and perhaps just talk to us as to what picture the zonal inflation is painting that is for the month of April this year.
Okay, yes. Thank you so much. Yeah, the zonal inflation is very important because one, it provides more detail compared to the national one. I'll give an example that you see when you are looking at a national inflation, you are just looking at one figure, but you will not be able to tell where this figure is coming from in terms of the regional, contribution. If I can also just give a bit of a background in terms of the zonal inflation, when NSA started compiling the CPI, it was Windhoek based. And Windhoek based, it means we only collected prices for Windhoek. And when this Windhoek inflation was compiled, it was, generalized to the rest of the country. But with time, we started now collecting prices in different localities from different regions. And as we proceeded, then these regions were grouped now into different zones. To say zone 1, you have your Zambezi, the 2 Kavangos, and the 4 northern region. And then commerce, it's under zone 2. And then zone 3, you have your coastal towns as well as the southern region. So it's disaggregated like that. So in terms of disaggregation, you will notice that for some users, more especially students, if they want to make an analysis, they would want to see, can I see maybe the inflation rate for Zambezi region? Previously, that was not possible. But with time, it will be possible because we are moving towards that. And in terms of the zones, at least that's where we can end in terms of disaggregating, because we can at least provide the inflation at the level of the zones. But now looking now at the zonal contribution in terms of how the inflation was for these zones, you find that zone 1, which is Zambezi and the rest, it was 3.7%. And then you have your commerce, that is at 3.2%. And then you have your zone 3, which recorded the highest inflation of 4.1. So you can see that this provides a lot of details and important details for us to compare. So when you are comparing where in Namibia do we have the highest inflation rate, you can actually, see that it's zone A, and in that zone, which are the regions that are there. But with time, as we move to the actual regions themselves, then you will be able to tell that, okay, for Zambezi, we have this inflation. For Kavango East-West, we also have this inflation and so on.
Okay, could this perhaps be a reason why you'd find that you've got different prices for goods in different regions, or is it because of the distance, perhaps looking at the transport of goods and the transport costs, therefore?
Yeah, in terms of the distance and the difference in terms of the inflation, there are a lot of factors that are at play. First of all, the commerce region, where we say Windhoek, you find that it's a central, distribution hub for most of the products.
Right.
I'll give an example of for maybe cooking oil, sugar. These products, when they are imported in the country, they come first in Windhoek. They are, repackaged, branded, and so on, and then they are distributed countrywide. So in Windhoek, they just come at that point, and the only distribution that happens is across the town at different shops and so on. But then the vast distances of taking these products to Katima, that adds a lot in terms of the final destination or the final consumption. So transport plays a major role. And on top of transport, you also find the issues of supply and demand. You find that in Windhoek, the demand side of things, there are so many people here, so they demand a lot compared to maybe areas like Zambezi where the population is less. So you expect the inflation also to be different. Then we also look at issues of economic activities that happens in these different areas. If you look at the number of people who are employed in Windhoek, they surpass those who are employed elsewhere. So all these, they play a major role in terms of determining the final price or the inflation that are in the region as compared to what is in Windhoek.
Right. Now, Elijah, just to close off this interview, take us through the difference that is between domestic-driven inflation and inflation that is from outside Namibia, and how these two are driving prices of goods and services at the current moment.
Yeah, when you look at the two concepts, they are distinct, but they all measure inflation. And the major difference is the source of this increase in price, the source of where these changes are coming from. When you are looking at domestic inflation, you are looking at the changes that are coming in from within the country. And I'll give more details to that. And when you look at imported inflation, the primary source of this inflation, they are external from the domestic economy. So I'll start with the factors that affect prices in the domestic economy. You look at your demand pull factor. Demand pull factor, you look at the situation where there is too much money in the economy chasing, too few goods. Then you have a situation where, because of a few goods that are available on the market and the demand is more, so prices will start to increase in order to catch up with the demand. As a result, you now get your inflation that is increasing. The second factor, you also want to look at the cost push inflation. This comes from the production side of things. And when producers are bringing together all the factors of input into the production process, they incur a lot of costs. And these costs, at the end of the day, they transfer to you and me, who are the final consumers of the good. And that's also another way in which this domestic inflation is caused. Another factor I mentioned is the policies, but we can leave that one here.
Yes.
Then we can go to the foreign factors, where you have issues of the exchange rate. Again, I think I alluded on the exchange rate to say, when we have the exchange rate that is depreciating, we are finding it expensive to import. And as a result, when those goods come, the importers will want to mark up, they want to cover their cost, and they transfer this to the consumers. So that's how this plays. You also have international, prices that change external to us. So when you look at South Africa, just an example, because that's where we import most of the goods, you'll find that at times there are riots in South Africa. Goods are not moving, trucks are being bent, and so on. All those things, they, trickle through inflation, and at the end of the day, we bear the cost.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
All right, Elijah, thank you so much for clarifying all of that and just educating us here on Business Today this evening.
All right, thank you so much for having me.